The note was taped to my suitcase, fluttering in the breeze as if it had always belonged there. You are not needed here. I recognized my sister's handwriting immediately, sharp, familiar, and painfully cold. I stood outside the front gate in my work heels, one suitcase beside me and another resting on the patchy lawn. I'd just returned from a 14-hour flight after spending 2 months overseas. This was the welcome my own family had prepared. The lights inside the house were on. Laughter drifted through the curtains. No one came outside. No one called. No one even sent a message. I didn't knock. I didn't yell. I simply stood there until something inside me quietly changed. Then I picked up my bags, turned around, and walked back to my car. None of them knew about the small one-bedroom apartment I owned on the edge of town. I had bought it with cash years earlier under a different name. It was my emergency escape, a place I never expected to need. That night I drove there. I unpacked in complete silence. Then I disappeared. No phone calls. No social media. No explanations. I simply vanished. My family believed they had finally pushed me out of their lives. What they didn't realize was that I had already started walking away long before they left that note on my suitcase. Now I was going to let them discover exactly what they had thrown away. Not with shouting. Not with revenge. But with consequences. The apartment felt cold and empty, but it was mine. I hadn't stayed there in nearly a year. Not since I'd been busy paying for my parents' home renovations, clearing my sister's debts, and helping cover the mortgage they kept promising was only temporary. Back then they begged for my help. They cried. They called me the dependable one. Now they couldn't even send a single text asking if I was okay. I sat alone at the tiny kitchen table staring at my phone. No missed calls. No apologies. No messages asking me to come home. That silence told me everything. I opened a folder on my encrypted drive labeled for later. Inside were 6 years of records. Every bank transfer. Every loan payment. Every receipt. Every financial favor I'd quietly given my family. I had never deleted a single document. Then I picked up the burner phone I used during business trips. No one in my family knew the number. I dialed one contact. Darren. He answered on the second ring. I'm ready, I said. Tell your team the answer is yes. There was a brief pause before he laughed. Took you long enough, Camille. I didn't smile. Because I already knew how this story would end. 2 mornings later, Darren arrived in a matte black SUV. He didn't ask why I had luggage with me. He simply handed me a cup of coffee and said, "Your attorney is waiting downtown." The drive was quiet. As the city passed by outside the window, I kept thinking about the note my sister had left on my suitcase. The confidence. The cruelty. They truly believed I had nowhere else to go. They never knew that for more than 2 years I had been working with a private real estate development firm, quietly buying distressed properties across the county. Every purchase was hidden behind carefully structured LLCs and holding companies. The ownership trail disappeared behind layers of paperwork that revealed nothing. This next deal, however, wasn't just business. It was personal. Darren glanced over. Your parents' property, he said. The one they refinanced last spring. Parcel 14B. I nodded. The balloon payment is overdue. He handed me a folder. We purchased the debt this morning. I read every page carefully. A slow smile crossed my face, though there was no happiness in it. My family taught me a lot, I said quietly. They taught me how people lie. How they take. How they disappear when they're done with you. I closed the folder. Now, I whispered, it's my turn to teach them something. I never returned. Not for birthdays. Not for holidays. Not for family dinners. To them I became a ghost. Meanwhile, life inside that house went on as if I had never existed. My sister filled my old bedroom with her belongings and posted smiling selfies from inside it. My mother complained online about her ungrateful daughter, who had abandoned the family. My father stopped saying my name altogether. It was as though I had died. But I hadn't. I had simply become quiet. While they decorated the house for family gatherings and shared carefully staged photos online, I spent my days meeting with surveyors, inspectors, attorneys, and property specialists. The land inspection uncovered structural concerns. Insurance inspectors reviewed the property again. The lender began calling my father week after week. He dismissed every warning. It's just paperwork, he kept saying. He never realized that I was often sitting just 2 floors above the bank's office, watching everything unfold. Then one morning an official notice was taped to their front gate. Final notice. Payment due within 14 days. That same afternoon, my sister uploaded another dramatic post online. People are so fake, she wrote. Even family can't be trusted. The following week I scheduled one final visit. Tuesday, 10 a.m. But when the knock came, it wasn't me standing at the front door. It was the city marshal. My parents, still wearing their pajamas, opened the door to find 2 officers, a building inspector, and an attorney holding a bright orange notice. My mother's face went pale. My father immediately began arguing, waving his arms as his voice grew louder. No one responded. The paperwork spoke for itself. The property had been cited for serious safety violations. Their insurance had expired, and after a missed payment the bank had already begun foreclosure proceedings. Within 30 minutes they were asked to leave the house. My sister stood barefoot on the front lawn, clutching her phone with trembling hands. "Who did this?" she cried. "Who would do this?" That's when my car pulled into the driveway. I stepped out wearing a navy blue dress, an iced coffee in one hand and a folder in the other. Everyone froze. My father stared as though he'd seen a ghost. "Camille." I met his eyes and gave a polite nod. "It's nothing personal," I said calmly. "It's business." The attorney beside me stepped forward. "The new owner has requested an immediate inspection." For the first time in years, I walked into my childhood home without asking anyone's permission. The house looked nothing like I remembered. The carpets were stained. The walls were chipped. Unpaid utility bills covered the kitchen counter. They had stopped caring for the home because they believed it would always belong to them. As I walked from room to room, old memories surfaced. My childhood bedroom was still there. My bookshelf stood against the wall, now covered in dust, cosmetics, and clutter that wasn't mine. My sister followed behind me. "You can't just take everything," she snapped. "You think this makes you better than us?" I turned to face her. "You made this easy." I placed a thick folder on the dining room table. Inside were years of bank records, contracts, receipts, and legal documents. Every dollar I had invested. Every agreement I had signed. Every decision they had made without expecting me to notice. The greatest irony was simple. They had used my investment to purchase the house through a shell company. Over the years, ownership of that company quietly changed hands. Now it belonged to me. They never bothered reading the paperwork. They never imagined I'd study corporate law. They never believed the daughter they ignored would one day understand the rules better than they did. I didn't yell. I didn't insult anyone. I simply looked at them and said, "You taught me how to survive. I just learned the lesson better than you expected." The next morning, the locks had already been replaced. A professional crew began clearing the property, following every legal requirement. The eviction paperwork had been delivered the night before by their own attorney. They simply hadn't checked their email. Later that afternoon, my father stormed into my office downtown. His face was red with anger. His voice was the same one that used to terrify me when I was 16. Only now it had no power. "You're destroying this family," he shouted. I looked up from my desk. I thought I was never part of it. My mother stood silently behind him. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You're doing this to your own family?" Without saying a word, I opened my briefcase and removed a document. It was the agreement she had signed 10 years earlier. The one that legally removed me from the family business and declared I had no future in it. I had kept it all these years. "You called me an outsider," I said quietly. "I finally believed you." I placed the document back into my bag. Then I returned to my work. The meeting was over. Weeks later, the final paperwork was complete. The company had been sold. Every client had been transferred. Every financial record had been audited and documented down to the last dollar. Everything had been done legally. Everything had been done fairly. I even hired an independent attorney to make sure my parents' rights were protected throughout the process. It was the last favor I would ever do for them. Today they live in a modest apartment. I live in a quiet place downtown. Peaceful. Private. Finally free. During one therapy session, my therapist asked me a simple question. "What does justice feel like?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I smiled. Not because I had defeated anyone. but because I no longer carried the weight of trying to earn love from people who had already decided I didn't belong. The day they left that note on my suitcase, they believed they were closing a door. They never realized they were opening another. One where I built a life on my own terms. A life no one could take away. And this time the only name on it was mine.